In October 2000, a lone metal detectorist unearthed one of the most extraordinary hoards of gold jewellery ever found in Britain.
This is a completely unique object. There is nothing like this anywhere else in the world.
Hidden Treasure assembled a team of archaeologists, metal detectorists...
You got a signal?
...and scientists to find out why this magnificent hoard was buried here in rural Hampshire.
It makes me realise how important the people who would have owned this sort of thing would have been.
The trail led us to Britain's first kings and ultimately to one of Rome's most famous men. Treasure. It's all around us.
Look at that!
Every day, new finds are bringing our history to life.
I think we've got a find over here.
I'm Miranda Kristovnikov. Join me in this hidden world, where passions run high, where secrets are kept, and where serious money can be made. The world of hidden treasure. My first stop was Hampshire, where I was hoping to meet the finder, metal detectorist Kevin Halls.
Excuse me.
Hello.
Are you Mrs. Halls?
But with this find, nothing was going to be straightforward.
I've been investigating the Winchester hoard and I understand that your husband found it recently with his metal detector.
Yes, he did.
Is he in? Can I have a chat with him?
No, I'm afraid he's not in. He's up at the site.
Can you tell me how to get there and I'll go and say hi?
Well, I'm not really allowed to take anybody out there because it is a secret location.
The find site had to be kept secret to prevent looting, but Jane agreed to take me there.
How did you feel when you realised what Kevin had found?
Very pleased. I mean, it was a marvellous thing. I mean, just to look at it, you knew it was worth quite a lot of money and very, very old. It was beautiful.
And have you ever tried metal detecting? I mean, were you sort of jealous now?
It's cold, it's wet and it's damp and I don't like being cold, wet and damp.
Fair enough.
We were nearing the location of the find, but then Jane revealed a catch. I had to wear a blindfold.
Have I got to put this on now?
Yes, you have.
Oh, OK, fair enough. Here we go.
To ensure the location remained a secret, I wasn't allowed to look.
So no, I can't be bribed.
Finally, after a long journey, we arrived at the elusive find spot.
OK.
Take my hand.
Yeah, I'll take your hand.
Lead on. Go on, you can see what you're doing. Boy, boy.
Come on then, up here.
We there yet?
Right, yes, you can take...
Can I take it off?
Yes, you can take it
Oh,
off now.
marvellous. Oh, beautiful. Where's
He's
Kevin?
over there.
Brilliant.
He's got his earphones on, so you might need to give him a call.
OK, thanks,
OK,
Jane. Bye.
Kevin found the pieces of the Winchester hoard one by one over 3 months, working in the utmost secrecy. In the end, he amassed 4 brooches, 2 bracelets, 1 chain, and the most amazing pair of gold necklaces or torques. They all dated to the late Iron Age, 100 years before the Roman conquest.
How did you feel when you first uncovered the items?
Basically, the word I suppose is gobsmacked, because in the ground it was just as it was placed 2,000 years ago. Absolutely perfect, glowing, just like this stuff here. And heavy, you know, I couldn't believe how heavy it was.
And did you realise when you made these finds how significant they would be?
I knew that they were going to be worth money, but I didn't know whether it was something that had been found before, because it turned out to be, in fact, unique.
Kevin was right. His find is unique. The exquisite design and craftsmanship of the torques were unlike anything ever uncovered from Iron Age Britain. Because the hoard was gold, it fell under the Treasure Act. This makes it a legal obligation to declare precious metal finds more than 300 years old. Kevin reported his finds to Sally Worrell, the local finds liaison officer for the Portable Antiquities Scheme.
How did you feel when he handed it in first?
Well, when he first phoned me and he said he found what he thought to be some gold brooches, I was a bit surprised because, you know, we don't get gold brooches. And so when he came in and he had them in a little pencil tin or something, they obviously were gold and Roman or earlier.
Kevin's prompt reporting of the finds led to a joint emergency excavation of the find spot by the British and Winchester Museums, a rare chance for them to investigate the archaeology.
So what happened at the dig?
Actually, not very much, because we were excavating the find spots, and surprisingly, there was absolutely no pottery was found, or no other sort of objects that would give us a chronological link.
The location where the gold talks were found is known only to a handful of people. So to help keep this secret, I've had this model made. Only we've moved rivers, roads, and even whole villages to disguise the find spot from potential looters.
The emergency excavation at the site where our hoard was buried showed no archaeology, no buildings or settlements, in fact nothing to help solve the mystery of why this fabulous hoard was buried there. So, where to now? Well, we think they've been looking in the wrong place. Over here, in this field on the other side of the valley, is an Iron Age settlement discovered during an excavation in the 1960s. The settlement is known as a banjo enclosure. This is a round enclosure approached by a road or track, surrounded by a ditch about 1.5 meters deep. But the field where this was discovered is massive, and we're not sure exactly where on the field the banjo enclosure is located. So we're going back to see if we can locate the banjo enclosure to find out more clues about who might have lived here and how they could be connected with our hoard.
So the investigation is underway. Sally, in her role as Finds Liaison Officer, assembles a team of local field walkers and metal detectorists to survey the site. They hope to pinpoint the exact location of the Iron Age banjo enclosure.
As you all know, the Winchester treasure was found in this general area, and so what we want to do today is try and add a bit more information to what we learnt from that excavation.
By carefully plotting and recording the location of each find, no matter how small, it's hoped the field walkers will be able to locate areas of archaeological interest.
You've got a bag full already there?
Yeah, mainly bits of brick and tile.
Right.
Probably not too old, but it's hard to tell at this
So
stage.
not looking Roman or Iron Age at the moment?
Not at the moment, but it's early days, yeah.
OK.
Big glazed pottery there.
Oh, this looks good.
Yeah, and just some brick or tile here.
Right.
I think it's a sea urchin, not archaeology.
Towards the end of the day, I caught up with archaeologist John Pearce.
How's the field walking been going?
Well, it's strange because we're not really finding very much less than we expected, given that this is a big Iron Age and Roman farm.
Why is that then?
Because it hasn't rained very much recently, the soil hasn't weathered much, and so you don't tend to see the pottery, especially if it's quite grey, sort of dark brown Iron Age pottery, it won't show up.
Right.
Another possibility is that the farmers may not be ploughing quite as deeply as they were before, so
Right.
the plough share isn't hitting the archaeological deposit. This may mean that what's left of the site has been quite well preserved.
So, the field walkers were having no luck locating the whereabouts of our banjo enclosure. Would this group of local metal detectorists do any better? The last time this site was examined was 40 years ago, before metal detectors were available. So there is a possibility that we are walking on more treasure.
Hey Nick, have you got anything?
Hopefully it's a coin, I don't know yet. Still trying to see.
Oh, it's still down there, is it?
It's still in there, yeah.
I like that little natty handheld device. It's great, isn't it?
Oh, look
what
at
is
that. Rusty old nail.
Oh no!
I know.
I don't like rusty nails, I want coins.
So...
It's not a Roman nail, is it?
No, it's older than you though. So.
You don't know that. So how's the day been for you?
It's been good. I've had 5 Roman coins.
5?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Have you got them there?
Yeah.
Have a look. Brilliant. Look at that. The detail on that is just brilliant. There's one really nice one there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's quite good, that.
What do you get out of metal detecting? Why do you do it?
It's a great hobby, and when you pick up a coin like that out of the ground, the last person to drop that was a Roman, and you're the next person to pick it up, really. But it's just a good, great feeling, you know.
I've got something.
Yeah? You got a signal?
Yeah, it's quite a good one.
Oh, great.
Yeah, there it is.
What is it?
It looks like a Roman brooch.
Very nice.
Yeah, Roman brooch.
Oh yeah, because the pin would have gone across the back there, wouldn't it? That's where the
That's
little
right.
hinge is. God, it's beautiful. It's really nice.
Amazingly, the metal detectorists had found Roman coins and a beautiful late Iron Age brooch. Their locations were all near the top of the field. Could we have found the Iron Age banjo enclosure glimpsed at during the 1960s excavation? I'd have to wait to find out more. In the meantime, I went to the British Museum to see the treasure for myself and meet Iron Age expert JD Hill, the curator responsible for the hoard.
This is a completely, totally unique object. There is nothing like this anywhere else in the world. And it is just so beautiful.
God, it's so heavy. That's amazing.
Well, it's heavy.
It's really heavy.
It's flexible. And it just completely foxed us. What on earth was this strange thing?
What would you have expected from an Iron Age find?
If this had been a standard Iron Age talk find, not that any talk find is standard, this is the sort of object which we would expect. This is the Snettisham Great Talk. This is the most famous Iron Age object from Britain. And we know that there are talks like this across Britain and Europe, and they're made a completely different way. You just compare the two.
But obviously very, very different.
Yeah, this looks completely different. It's flexible. It's made in a completely different way, which gives it that flexibility.
So, these amazing objects are unlike anything JD has seen from Iron Age Britain. Have we come across the work of an unknown British Iron Age master craftsman?
The really important question for these objects is who made them and where did they make them? Is this a set of objects made in Britain by British craftspeople who've seen a foreign technology? Or are these objects actually made somewhere in the Roman world and sort of brought here as gifts or trade?
But how were these talks constructed over 2,000 years ago? To find out, I went in search of one of the British Museum's most skilled craftsmen to set him a challenge. Could Ian McIntyre create a replica of one of these talks?
Now, the talk looks incredibly complicated. Where did you start?
It's a well-known system. It's known as a loop-and-loop chain system.
How did you calculate how big the loops were?
Quite simply, I had to try it. There's no way I could get around it. And this portion here, these are long loops. It's the correct pattern because I'm using the correct technique. But what would you say, the texture, the outside texture
Yeah, well, it's very different.
It's asking a bit much. I think it's to bend them twice. I've straightened it and bent it.
As I left Ian to get on with his challenge, he began to realise it was far more difficult than he'd first thought. As Ian persevered in the bowels of the British Museum, I headed back to Winchester, where the hunt for the banjo enclosure was going on. A geophysical survey was being carried out on the settlement field around where we had found the cluster of pottery, coins and the stunning brooch. I hoped the survey would find yet more traces of the Iron Age settlement. I would have to wait patiently for the results. Meanwhile, over on the other side of the valley where the hoard had been discovered, I went to meet archaeologist John Crichton. He'd promised to explain why our hoard had been buried in such an isolated location.
Hi there.
Hi.
How's the geophys going?
It's going very well, yes.
Good. Now, what I want to know is why is such an amazing find being buried here on this sort of pretty insignificant part of the landscape?
I'm trying to work out what people were thinking 2,000 years ago. Well, that's tough. One thing that we've learned from experiences, quite often when we find really nice objects like this, is that they're sort of buried in sort of boundary locations, is that they're sort of ritual deposits on the edge of someone's territory, on the edge of their landscape, their homestead.
So we're on a boundary?
It's a very significant boundary. What you have is, to the north of here, you have a whole landscape which is dominated by banjo enclosures. Down here to the south, nothing. Almost not quite a settlement vacuum, but very, very different kind of landscape.
Right.
And therefore we've got this very important find right on this boundary, and that may be part of the reason why it's been put here.
Back at the British Museum, Ian McIntyre is gradually getting the hang of the pattern and workmanship. But it's taking more time than he thought, and a little help from modern technology.
I think I should push that in before I go any further. How? Said he.
It was beginning to seem impossible that a British Iron Age goldsmith would have had the knowledge to come up with such an exquisite design. But before I had a chance to go and see Ian again, I had a call from Winchester archaeologist Dick Winnie, who had the results from the geophysical survey. Had we discovered the banjo enclosure? Dick had sounded very excited.
We can see here and here, there are two rather darker marks, which correspond to hotspots, if you like, in the geophysics survey.
They had located the enclosure where the metal detecting and field walking had suggested. And what's more, it looked like there was something interesting still hidden beneath the soil.
Well, you can see we've got hotspots here and here, which correspond to these positions here and here on our banjo. And so we plan to open up some small trenches in those areas.
So have you got any idea what these hotspots might yield?
Well, we expect them to be metal finds of some description, most likely to be iron or lead, or perhaps even some more treasure.
God, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
As the layers of soil came off the site, it became clear that the geophysics results were right. We were digging in the right spot and had found our banjo enclosure.
Now, what is that huge swathe through the trench?
Well, this is the big ditch that showed up on the geophysical survey. Coming in from my left is the remains of a trackway where it joins with the enclosure ditch, which defines the banjo enclosure, which goes out right out across the field behind us.
And what other features have we got in the trench?
Well, down here in this corner there appear to be 2 or 3 smallish circular features, as you can see. 2 or 3 here and the larger one behind us here.
Right. And what are they?
They seem to be post holes, or the remnants of post holes, which may well relate to some kind of structure, some kind of gate arrangement.
So, could the gate have been an imposing entrance to a major Iron Age settlement? And could it have belonged to the owners of our hoard?
And what's Nick doing over there?
At the moment, Nick is investigating where the geophysical survey suggested there was a largest metallic object.
Oh, this was the magnetic anomaly, was it?
Exactly right,
Brilliant.
yes. This is the magnetic anomaly.
And that's the reason why we dug this trench here,
Exactly
wasn't
right,
it?
yes.
Right, what have you got down there, Nick?
A large chunk of lead.
Right, and what might that be?
Oh, a bit of a coffin with a bit of that.
Yeah?
If it is a coffin, what's it doing here? I left the team to it and headed back to the British Museum, where Susan Lanice in the science department had discovered an important clue to the origins of the hoard.
Hi, how are you?
All right, thank you.
You meet Sue?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello.
You've been working hard on our gold.
Yes, we've got one of the brooches in at the moment. So you can see how high the gold peaks are here, and the tiny copper peak, and even smaller silver peak. It's obviously a very high gold content.
Right, what is the content?
This particular brooch is over 90% gold. The only way they could be getting this low silver level is by refining it, and we are not aware of any refining in the Celtic world.
Not in the Celtic world? Foreign craftsmanship? So, where could it have come from?
The only people who are refining gold at this time in Europe are people in the Roman and Greek world.
Right, so it's not British?
No.
Because you wanted them to be British, didn't you?
Well, I wanted them to at least be made in Britain, but the one thing we can definitely say is even if they were made in Britain, that gold is almost certainly not from Britain or Ireland, it's from the classical world.
So, our gold isn't British, and the workmanship most likely isn't either. So what is it doing in rural Hampshire? Who were these people with links to the classical world in 50 BC, 100 years before the Roman invasion? It's known that Julius Caesar tried to invade in 55 BC, which would tie in with the dating of our hoard. But it has always been thought that Caesar's legions had left no real mark on Iron Age Britain. Had we been wrong? I went to ask John Crichton.
So you're saying that Caesar's invasion of Britain was a bit of a failure?
Julius Caesar, who visited Britain about 55, 54 BC, left a new regime here, left a new series of kings here,
Right.
who we start finding out had very, very close contact with Rome throughout the next 2 or 3 generations until Claudius invades.
And who was leading those dynasties?
Well, the head of the first dynasty that we know about is Commius. He's also the first person that we find inscribing his name on coinage, and this is an example of it. Now, this is the very, very first king that we have in Britain, that we have the name of appearing on a coin. Can you just see there's a tiny bit of an M?
Yeah.
Otherwise, the rest of his name's fallen off.
Right.
So these are very much the first kings of Britain.
Incredible. Here was a coin from one of the first kings of Britain.
And look at this, completely different kind of lettering.
John showed me more coins of kings who followed Commius. They showed clear evidence of becoming more and more influenced by Rome. I was beginning to wonder if there was a connection between these new kings in Britain and our hoard.
Where does our jewellery fit into this story then?
Well, the kind of date of it is 50 to 30 BC, so the ruler who was around then was Commius.
Right.
So I guess it would be some kind of diplomatic gift from the Roman world to this new leader.
What is a diplomatic gift?
It's basically a way of keeping people sweet and happy and quiet on the borders of the Roman world.
Right.
Now, if you've got all sorts of barbarians around you, all sorts of potential enemies around you, you want to be politically close to the leaders and rulers of all the satellite states. So you have gift exchange between different rulers taking place.
Yeah.
And that's what this jewellery might be.
Nice gift.
Very nice.
So, our gift was most probably given to the new local king. Could it have been Commius? And if so, could he have lived on our site? Back at the site, Sally had been concentrating on the hotspot. Had she found a coffin as Nick had predicted?
Sally, hi. This is one of the hot spots, wasn't it? How are you getting on?
It was. We've actually excavated the hotspot, and what it actually was is just a large piece of scrap lead.
Right,
so
that's all.
not an exciting object, I'm afraid.
That's a shame. What else did you find?
We've also had a small range of mid and late Iron Age pottery and also some animal bone. Not very much of it, but sort of stuff you'd expect in a ditch fill, basically.
It may not sound like much, but it was becoming clear that we were on the site of a huge Iron Age settlement. Using the results of the geophysical survey, we calculated that our banjo enclosure was over 10,000 square metres, equivalent to 1.5 football pitches. This makes it the biggest and most important ever found in Britain. So, what does this tell us about who might have lived here, and are we getting closer to the owners of our hoard?
This particular site we know is probably of fairly high status. A lot of these banjo enclosures, or double pairs of banjo enclosures actually, some of them develop into Roman villas, so very high status buildings in the Roman period.
Right.
So high status site, high status find, not too far from it. That it's quite possible that the two are related and that whoever did deposit that might have actually lived here or certainly visited here.
The pieces of the mystery were slowly coming together, but how is Ian getting on with the talk? I couldn't wait.
Here it is. The final.
Moment of truth.
Final, the moment of truth. Did it work?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful.
Okay.
Can I
pick it up? Yes, indeed. Yes. Oh.
That is just
That's
exquisite, and I love this clasp.
Yes, it works out very well.
It's just stunning.
Okay, do you want to try it on?
I'd love to. Please. God, it does feel really chunky around my neck.
You feel rich and powerful.
I feel very rich and powerful. You haven't got a mirror, have you?
Oh, yes. There you go.
Oh, wow. It's stunning, isn't it? Actually, having it on, it makes me realise how important the people who would have owned this sort of thing would have been.
Today, the importance of the Winchester hoard is in its historical and archaeological value. But under the Treasure Act, it has another value: hard cash. Kevin has been awarded a fair market price for his find. Desperate to see what he'd been offered, I took the replica of our talk to see what he and Jane would make of it. Would it encourage them to spill the beans?
Now, we've had a little challenge going on at the British Museum, and we've actually had a replica of your talk made. And I've got the result here, so if you'd like to have a look. What do you think of that, Jane?
Oh, it's very good.
Is that like the real thing? You can pick it up and have a little fiddle around.
Oh, yes, very much so. Very much lighter. Yes,
how does it feel to hold it again?
It's not quite so heavy, but it is lovely, yes. It's very, very good.
Yeah. Oh, but all the detail on
yes,
the
it has.
there.
But I was dying to ask the big question that had been preying on my mind.
What's the value of your hoard? Can you disclose the value of your hoard?
350,000.
Gosh, it's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, quite a bit, yeah.
And what are you going to do with the money?
We haven't really thought about it yet, have we?
No.
We just said we'd like a nice holiday and probably change the car, that sort of thing. But
there must be something that you'd like to buy.
Don't forget the earrings.
Earrings.
Yes, lots of earrings. But
new metal detector.
New metal
get a new metal detector
or several.
And probably get a grunt from the missus who'll say, you've got too many machines already, you know, what do you want another one for?
350 grand sounds a lot, but Kevin has to share this reward with the landowner. Back at the dig, I met up with JD. As the curator of the Winchester Hoard, he has a special interest in the site. He was convinced that our banjo enclosure, the largest in Britain, held the key to the mystery of the talks. But how is this possible?
We tend to think of a rich site as being one which is going to produce lots of gold or silver or exotic objects. That's not what makes rich people rich in Iron Age Britain. A rich site in Iron Age Britain is to do with how many cows you've got, how many sheep you've got, how much agricultural land you've got. And to simply have a huge banjo like this is telling us these are people who own huge quantities of cows, huge quantities of animals, and that's what their wealth is all about.
It seems we have a fantastically wealthy landowner. Was he Commius, one of the first kings of Britain whose name I'd seen stamped on those coins?
We've got someone who is clearly incredibly important, incredibly powerful, important enough to receive, probably one of the most expensive gifts ever given to a barbarian.
But why would our wealthy barbarian have buried such an expensive gift?
The more we start to look at Iron Age metalwork, the more we're beginning to suspect that these are religious offerings, these are gifts to the gods. You're either saying, please do something for me, or something pretty important's just happened to you.
And why buried so far away from the enclosure then?
It seems really important to sort of go out beyond the areas where you're actually farming into the wild, perhaps on the boundaries of your sort of tribal area, and put these offerings in the ground there.
So, had one of the first British kings praying to his pagan gods buried the hoard? I had one final question for JD.
So if this was from the Roman world and it was a diplomatic gift, who was it from?
This is a gift given to someone here by 3 very important Romans. It could be Julius Caesar, it could be Mark Antony, or it could be the Emperor Augustus.
Come on, narrow it down for me. Who was it?
My suspicion is that it's probably Julius Caesar.
Seriously?
I couldn't believe it. What a connection to the past. I had held in my hands a gift given to one of Britain's first ever rulers by none other than Julius Caesar himself.